I had an idea for a show, but first I needed a table, backdrop, and a host with a microphone. That's me. I'm Thomas J. Beleza, and this is Let Me Be Round With You, a show where discussions are explored through civil conversation. So I found 4 people I like and decided to see where today's topic goes in hopes we can inspire positive dialogue. Hey, welcome to an episode of Let Me Be Around With You, me and my radio voice, of course. Now, this is a program set as a roundtable discussion. Today's episode is focused on Let's Talk About Sex. That's right, I'm Thomas J. Beleza, and I'll be your moderator for this exchange. Today, I'm joined by 4 guests. We have Jeffrey Thompson, Erica LaRose, Laura Bugge, and Nick Bonanno. Hey, Jeff, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm an actor, I teach psychology, I do taxes, and sometimes I do magic. Was this your card?
That was my card, Jeff. And watch me make you disappear. So next, we have Erica LaRose. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, that was good. I am an actress and producer. I'm living in Los Angeles, California. Was trying to be bi-coastal with Brooklyn and LA before COVID hit, but now I'm here, and I'm not moving.
And we wouldn't want you to move unless you come to visit Brooklyn. All right, Laura Bugge, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Laura. I'm a massage therapist. I'm in a room with all these witchy things because I'm Wiccan and things like that. Yeah, I'm just excited to debate some things with all these lovely people.
Wonderful. You put a spell on us with that thought-provoking answer. All right, Mr. Nick Bonanno, one of my closest little friends. I saw this man grow up to become an amazing individual that has inspired me right back as I hopefully inspired him. Nick, tell us a little bit about your amazing life.
Thomas, it is amazing to see you and everyone here. I am an entertainment professional based in Los Angeles, California. My current role, I am the executive producer and showrunner for a TV show called Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And to everyone else in this group, just want to say, 1, I love magic. 2, I have love for both Los Angeles and Brooklyn. And 3, I hope your solstice was good just a couple days ago. So cheers.
Wow, that was really amazing. I noticed you pointed out everyone but me, but that's no, I'm just kidding. No, we love Nick coming here. He has a great point of view and perspective on a lot of subjects. You're here because we want to hear your voice on said subjects for today's episode, specifically talking about sex. Now, before we get started, I have to present the proposition or the position. That was a Freudian slip. I'm sorry, Jeff. I apologize for that advance. Getting into it, I want to say, the position of today's show is that we are talking about the conversation of sex and sex in our culture. Not necessarily sex itself, not how to do sex, what is sex about, but more the conversation of how that we have with others about sex and sex in our culture. Why is sex a taboo? Why is sex naughty, dangerous, and for a lack of better word, no pun intended, exposed to negative feedback as a form of expression? So one of our guests today, sex is an extremely taboo part of our USA culture. Women are still fighting to free the nipple. We sexualize and sexualize the idea of nudity, expose genital shocks, onlookers, even at a nude beach. System of ratings have been created for television, film, and other outlets to ensure we know there is nudity. But that's the thing. Jeff, I'm going to go to you first. What is it about nudity that makes it so taboo in our USA culture? Unmic yourself, good sir.
I said all my best stuff. Thank you for listening. When we're looking at like culture, there are always things that are taboo. And that's going to depend culture to culture, right? You look in like sub-Saharan African cultures where nudity isn't as big of a deal, right? But in American culture, we're obsessed with like nipples for some reason. It's like you see one peeking through somebody's shirt, male or female, and it's something that catches your attention. And it's basically how we're raised, right? In the same way that some people are raised to be afraid of mice and insects and other people embrace them, we were raised to feel like these things are bad or wrong, right? So if you're looking at it from an evolutionary perspective, We have dogs and cats that are naked in our houses and we don't care about it. But for some reason, if it's a person that's naked, we have all these feelings about it. But it's just because we were taught to feel that way. So why do we do it? It's just what we learned to do. And does that make it right or wrong? I think it just makes it silly. Honestly, that we have all these hang-ups over literal parts of the body. 100 years ago, if you saw somebody's ankle, you'd have a boner. Now it takes a little bit more, but it's still pretty puritanical. Yeah.
And you're right. Over the course of time, an ankle was risque, and now it's like, well, they're wearing thongs, and it's like But more importantly, the idea of a nipple in general is something that we're born with both sexes, because we start off as a fish, but then we work our way into becoming a female, and then at a certain point of that evolution within the stomach, we develop the nipples, and then our bodies say, no, you're going to be a dude, and then you end up like me with very, 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 very tiny nipples, and I don't like my shirt off. So just the idea is like we both have nipples, yet if you place if you place real male nipples on a naked woman photo, you can then show that naked woman with the hairy man nipple, but you cannot show that same photo without the male nipple. It's insane. And you're right, it's all culture based. And we're talking mostly today, we're focusing on USA culture, but you do bring up a lot of great points that maybe that's the way we were raised, and our culture has created these taboos, and therefore, do we even have a choice? And that's where I'm going to bring up some devil's advocate here. Erica, throwing it to you. Do you think, Erica, throwing it to you. Do you think that we have a choice to maintain that taboo, or can we start changing that taboo as a culture?
Well, that's a really good question. I think we could. I think we probably could. I just think that it's going to really take some time, because people seem to. I'll speak for myself. I'm not going to say people. There's been times where I've been hesitant to share something because I felt that I would be judged. And I think that probably many other people feel that way. So I'd really love to not feel that way. So I think it's about how do we move forward as a society so we don't feel like we're going to be taken in a bad way because we're more open to our bodies. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. If we don't have the freedom to speak or have a conversation about sexuality, sex in general, that makes it scary. It's sort of like don't talk politics and don't talk religion. We're holding ourselves to a certain standard that is ultimately silence is bliss, and yet we should be able to talk about these things, not to invoke that urge, that arousal of the subject, but more to educate, to conform our minds to be willing to explain these things to children and things like that. Laura, did I see your hand up? Do you want to add to that? Laura, did you? No? Okay. And jumping on that topic, the conversation of sex at the table, parents explaining the birds and the bees, even that statement is censored when talking about it to children. Sex as a conversation is uncomfortable for some individuals. To have an open, positive discourse with individuals of all ages. And by all ages, Laura, I want to throw this to you. What I'm saying is, when speaking to educate someone on what sex is and how it is a part of our lives, why can we not have the verbal exchange with any age of a person? More importantly, is sex that wrong, dirty, and evil that there should be an age limit to an understanding of our very nature as people?
That's an amazing question. I think education should start, me, myself, as a nudist. Education about human anatomy and what sex is and how humans came to be, how any animal comes to be is all within that umbrella. So I think it's very prevalent that we educate ourselves so that we have the power within us to educate others. Yeah.
No, you make a great point. You know, education is important because it expands our gathering as a people. It allows us to feel comfortable, and you know, more importantly, sex could lead to some things that maybe are not on our table in a timely manner. For example, unprotected sex could lead to STDs, or more importantly, it could lead to pregnancy. And at that point, what do you have protecting you from? You know, now you're like, well, I got a kid. I got pregnant. Now I have to make that choice. Do I want to keep it, or do I not? Now you're in a whole other realm. And it's only because we as a grouping did not give ourselves a chance to say, hey, sex is not bad. However, this is why you should think about protective measures. This is why you should learn how pregnancy works. You should learn how your body works. More importantly, how does the other person's body work? And not just to sexually please somebody, but to ultimately be comfortable with having that conversation. It's sort of like when periods are brought up. You know, I see guys, period, you know, and they want to grab the tampons to buy for a girl. Oh, famine, you know, and again, that comes down to the taboo and the mysticism of ultimately sexuality and that world. You know, that's a girl, you know, but it's a thing that happens. You know, especially like, you know, when men wake up with an erection or have an erection through, because what is the average erection per day? I think it's like 3 or 4. At my age, it's 0. But, you know, it's not something, it shouldn't be like, oh, he has an erection, you know, and then it scares the culture. We have no control over it sometimes. It's just a part of the cycle. And it's time as a culture to normalize what we are as a people. But, you know, moving on to sexual expression leads us down a road of temptation when the act of presenting an open door window to be purchased. OnlyFans, Pornhub, and other outlets, including Patreon, have given people a chance to utilize their sex appeal to pique people's interests. The female body, mostly, is seen as an object to lust after. And in this ponder, I point out that mostly women are taking over that community in record numbers. Bella Thorne, an actress, recently set an OnlyFans record with bringing in $1 million in 24 hours. Now, Nicholas, Mr. Bonanno, my question to you in regard to this is about the culture itself. Is sex so desired and forbidden that we can charge to expose those desires? Moreover, why is there a negative outlook on people charging for nudity?
So why is there a negative outlook to that? I believe that would come down to perspective. I think that people should be able to do what they want in that respect, especially because it's consent-based. So it's like if it's something that someone is deciding to put online intentionally, as opposed to, say, having their nude stolen, which would not be intentional, then they have say over what they put out, and in theory how it is used. In a lot of places like that, you're not able to copy or take the media down in any sense, and a lot of those people will have a statement written into their profile or what have you that they own it, which they do. And so in
the first part is sex so desired and forbidden that we can charge to expose those desires?
For the time being, yeah, and culturally it is. I think it is possible that in theory, okay, this even comes back to something that you once told me, Thomas, is that there is so much adult content that exists that you would never be able to see in all of it ever. It would just because they keep making so much more of it. So you would think that with that overabundance of content that people would be less interested in it. And what you've just told me, even like with the $1 million figure or with the however popular those different sites are, that doesn't seem to be waning in popularity whatsoever. So especially now when I think a lot of what people have to deal with with quarantine or a pandemic or what have you is a lack of in-person options. I think people are looking for a different way to reach out to people since you can't necessarily meet up with people. And so if say OnlyFans or something like that is the way for people to do that, then yeah, they can. It is desirable enough for it to be sought after in such a sense. So if people are able to capitalize that in a decent way, good for them.
Yeah, and they absolutely, without a doubt, should be able to do that. You know, again, we have control over ourselves, but to judge and demand structure from others almost seems inhuman. The idea, even when somebody upsets you, they didn't necessarily upset you. You were upset by what they did, but that doesn't mean they should change their behavior if they aren't physically hurting you and just stating their opinion. Like someone saying, "Well, I like apples." Oh, apple. I'm allergic to apples. I hate the conversation. You shouldn't talk about apples anymore. No, I can talk about apples. You know, like you don't have control over people. If people want to be naked, let them be naked. And even the idea earlier that we discussed that everything has ratings, you know, like, oh, this is R because there's nudity. I remember watching a movie when I was younger and it was PG and there was nudity in it. And that same movie now is R. And it's just a representation of our culture becoming more and more restrictive in what we deem appropriate for all ages. And that's the idea, is like, if it was, well, we'll get into that in a second, but ultimately I want to talk about how money is a driving force in all things naughty. Gambling has a massive return. Street drugs have earned a great deal of money for those dealing in that world. Alcohol in the 20s and 30s were an industry earning empire. And of course, the pornography industry generates 12 billion annually. That's 12 billion annually. More importantly, you know, I want to go back to Erica because I asked Erica a devil's advocate, so I want to give her a straight on question. You know, to what I just said, like with alcohol, we stopped the illegal aspect of the product. If we demystify the industry of sex workers, sex in general, and the porn industry, would it have the same impact that ending prohibition had in our USA culture?
So when you say the same impact, what is that to you?
Well, that's an excellent question. So what I mean by the same impact is alcohol is not sought after in a way that has caused crime. It stopped murders and killing. The ability to get alcohol is much easier. There are some restrictions, for example, age, which has gone up over the years. I remember when it was 18. And the funny thing is my brother turned 18 and then it went up to 21. When it went up to, like, it just kept going up. And he was just like, all right, I'll just drink. You know, however, in some cultures, especially like Europe and things like that, alcohol, you could drink it at any time. And,
Right,
you know, it's not that big of a deal. So what I'm saying is, would it have the same impact that ending prohibition had, which means there's less control over the value of it? It's more free. We are learning from it. It's not something we, you know, if you can't drink alcohol, you're going to want to drink alcohol is what I'm saying.
We won't, but we can't have.
Yeah.
Oh, girl, that's too damn bad. You know that song?
Oh, yeah. Every day I listen to that song.
No, I really think there's something to say about that. We do want what we can't have, and we kind of, you know, the taboo of it kind of makes it a bit more interesting. So I think that naturally it would evolve the whole any industry that has sex in it, it would just naturally evolve if it became less mystified. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean that financially anything would change, but that the whole culture of it would evolve 100% for sure.
Yeah, it definitely would evolve. You know, one of the funny things about technology is ultimately the thing with technology is that even back when X-rays were invented, you know, one of the first things they X-rayed was people having sex. You know, like it was like it's just ridiculous. You know, like, look, we could do X-rays, and then they filmed people running around and having sex, and they would just, you know, and then when photos became a thing, you know, they started taking pictures of nudity. So it's, you know, the evolution of like, oh, this is interesting. But then nudity became, you know, oh, taboo. So now you couldn't take naked photos. And then Penthouse came out and there was a huge lawsuit and they went to the Supreme Court and, you know, Larry Flynn fought it for, you know, and they were like, yeah, I know it might be disgusting to you, but he has the right to show it because, you know, whatever. And then they were like, well, let's just slap it's nudity. But let's move on to the final question. as a group answer. And I want to bring up the position that in sexual relationships, this doesn't necessarily mean romantic. It doesn't necessarily mean ultimately having a relationship with somebody. This is just a sexual relationship. Conversations about sex are not always as open as we think they are. We cannot determine to know what a sound means when it's let out. More importantly, our desires or sex drive vary from person to person. The lack of drive does not always mean the party is uninterested. And to meet one and another's needs, there needs to be a full and open conversation about what their needs are, kinks, desires, and, even how often their drive requires sex. Once these things are known, it is not the responsibility of the other to agree to everything. We must understand our own personal boundaries. But this is also this means to respectfully be listening to your partner as they reveal their soul to you. However, not everyone will like a kink, and sometimes we might try a new kink, but that doesn't mean we'll enjoy it, nor does it mean we have to do it again. I bring that up because to end the show, I would like to give this last question to the room, starting with Jeffrey Thomas, of course. I ask, is it possible that the way our USA culture looks at sex, sexuality, and our sexual expression, that it has made it harder for individuals to be comfortable opening and having these conversations with a potential or current lover? To add, even saying that comes down to the right moment, how well you know them, etc., etc. But should it really come down to the right moment? Shouldn't the right moment be any time that you feel this conversation needs to happen?
Yeah, 100%. I think American culture is really bad at promoting healthy relationships. So we just don't talk about our needs, especially because we just kind of expect the person that we're with, if it's a short-term or long-term thing, to be able to read our minds. So, I shouldn't have to say what I want as a gift for Christmas. They should just know me well enough to be able to predict what I want. And if that's what we do with gifts, which aren't taboo, what do we do with sex and our desires? And what we do is we have all these desires that we feel like we cannot express because we're afraid of judgment, because sex is judged. People are judged for the number of partners they have or haven't had, the types of partners that they've been with, the things that they've tried and they haven't tried. And so because it's so taboo, we feel like we can't talk about it. But since it's so core to our relationships and how we express ourselves with the other person, if we can't talk about it, then we're not really connecting. So that's definitely a downside of our USA.
Yeah, no, I agree
culture.
with you, sir. To take away that freedom to be comfortable and talk about sexuality does hinder a relationship's growth. How can we truly be intimate with somebody if we're scared or afraid or unaware of the reaction, when in turn we should be comfortable of the respect that person has for us for saying, I have giganticism. I love big girls, and but like giants, like 23-foot like high women, and I like crawling around them, and that's my kink. Like, if we can't say that to somebody without them going, all right, well, I won't see you tomorrow then, it's going to change the world. Going to Nick Bonanno, asking the same question I said to Jeff ultimately, which it was is it possible that the way our USA culture looks at sex, sexuality, and our sexual expression, that it has made it harder for individuals to be comfortable having these conversations? And of course, should it really come down to the right moment, or should we be able to just kind of speak about it whenever we feel we need to speak about it?
I guess what do you consider the right moment versus what whenever you feel? Is whenever just you're in Disneyland, you're walking down the the street or whatever, hey, let's talk about it now? Or is it like is the right moment, let's schedule a time to talk about it? Like, I'm not.
Yeah, and it should be open, because the idea of this entire conversation has brought up age as a basically an element of the conversation. Why would it be inappropriate to talk about sex at Disney World, and that is culture change. Is that, well, we don't want children to hear about it, but why don't we want children to hear about it? But then it also comes down to the graphicness of it. Obviously, even if you're talking about talking to somebody who just lost, say, like, I don't know, their aunt, or let's just go with a dog. Like, let's say we're just talking to someone who lost a dog. You're not going to be like, oh, did you lose a dog? Did it get hit by a car? Like, how did it, like, was its face smashed in? Like, there is a respect factor to the level of detail you might want to give somebody, but to be able to have that conversation anywhere is the point of this discussion. Why can't we talk about sex in general? So as far as the right moment, I'm asking, should there be a right moment? And if we're talking about what the right moment is, it's different for everybody, everyone. And that's the problem. We don't talk about it. I might bring up to you, Nick, hey, Nick, I want to cuddle. And you're like, whoa, we're in front of my parents. I don't want them to know this is a thing. But in reality, that's not the right moment for you, but it was the right moment for me. And that's why we're talking about, well, should there be a right moment? Should we, like, what is the deal with this conversation? But go ahead, give your 2 cents.
Yeah, so I think there should be a right moment, but that is something that you figure out by kind of saying it when you need to. And when you need to, that could be as simple as, like saying that you need to talk about things, which is still kind of not, there's still adding like a step to the process. I'm trying to think. So is it possible to get to a point where we don't have to get to that step? I don't think so, just because you can really only control what you do. So, like, and what I mean by that, necessarily say you're at, Disney World or whatever we had said. I mean, not everyone lives by those same rules. So, I do think that there's a respect to being able to talk to people about it, and there's a respect that other people might not want to talk about it. So, my take, I think, is that I don't think that you can get to a point where you can just talk about sex at any point with anyone present. Not yet.
Yeah, and that's the point of this episode is why not? Why? And that's the thing. Like, we create our own taboos, and we have our own education to it, the way our environments or our upbringing or just the lessons around us. But on the same token, you hear about Mormons who have like these strict lives, and then they end up turning into like porn stars. And then you have the other outlet, people that are around sexuality all the time. It discusses them, and they're not so much that way. So it really doesn't. It comes down to a mixture of the person and obviously their environment and a couple other things. But what I'm stating is ultimately, why does it have a restriction? What is the taboo of sexuality and sex and that in our culture that makes it so you have to say to yourself, is this the right time? Because additionally, what if you're talking to somebody, right? And you're talking about a nice juicy hamburger, and you just want it to melt in your mouth, and you're talking to the other person, and they're like, oh, I can really go for a hamburger. And then a vegan walks up and goes, how dare you? Let's go even more crazy. Someone from PETA comes up to you and goes, how dare you talk about ripping a family member away from someone else just so you can indulge in flesh? Why can't, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we talk about meat or dietary needs more open than that, but yet talking about meat could lead to that discourse, which we're talking about. If somebody says, oh, I really like cuddling naked with my girlfriend. Oh, I can't believe you just said that openly in public. And that's ultimately what I'm saying in this conversation is that's basically the same thing. We're choosing to find hamburgers okay to talk about, but not sexuality. However, if we talk about hamburgers and there's somebody else that doesn't find it good, they're going to say, hey, you can't say that. So yeah, it doesn't matter about your surroundings, possibly, but I'm saying, why can't we have that open conversation to demystify sexuality in general? I'm going to throw it to Laura, though. Laura, to the same question, that it's harder to for individuals to be comfortable and to open it. Is it possible? Is it possible that the way our culture in the USA looks at sex, sexuality, or a sexual expression, that it has made it harder for individuals to be comfortable? What are your thoughts on that? And remember to unmute your mic, because we can't hear you if your mic is up. There you
go. I said that I agree with what Erica said earlier about it's going to take time to get to that level where we're all like on that same page of, or like on that same level of being comfortable with it, but it's also knowing the level of tact that comes along with communicating that to your partner, to whoever you're with. Like, what was the other part of the question?
The other part was ultimately like, there's a saying, it has to come out. You got to talk about sexual stuff at the right moment. But what is the right moment? And should there really be a right moment?
I think just whatever comes naturally to you as a person, and then you have to gauge where your partner is with where they're at. Like, if, like what you said earlier, like if you're at a funeral or something, that's not the right time to bring up something that you want to do with them, like maybe the next week or something like that. It's there's a time and a place for things. I think the understanding of that is the most prevalent thing to be conscious of and continue with, and to educate others in the I guess in the community thought process of sharing your thoughts, your needs, your pleasures, whatever it may be. But I don't know.
No, look, this show, we're trying to get people to expose themselves in one way or another, spiritually, mentally, and intellectually, and whatever their position is on those subject matters that we bring up on any episode. You don't always have to have the biggest answer, the right answer, or the wrong answer. You just need to be able to express yourself. And I just appreciate you being able to talk about it. And to add to your funeral statement, though, one time I was at a funeral, and before I went, because I'm very loud and I make a lot of jokes, and my friend was like, "Hey, listen, this is my father's funeral. I was wondering, could you not make any jokes? Just kind of, I'm just grateful you're here. Just be here." And I said, "Sure, no problem." So I get in there, and we're sitting around. Everyone's just moping around because, it's a funeral. And out of nowhere, one of his friends is sitting next to me, and he just cracks a little tiny joke. Just a little joke. And, I look at my friend, I go, "Hey," and, my friend looks at him, and he's like, "Hey, man, this is my father's funeral." And I was like, "Yeah, I didn't say it. I didn't pop the bubble first. He did. He popped the bubble." And then I made a couple other people laugh. And the next thing you know, everyone's laughing. I'm making jokes. I'm entertaining, blah, blah, blah. After the funeral, he comes over to me, he hugs me. He goes, "I'm never going to tell you not to be funny. You just made this day perfect." And that goes to the saying of, when is the right time? What is appropriate? And that's my point, is what we may think is appropriate versus what other people may think is appropriate versus even ourselves. In that moment, he thought it was appropriate not to be making jokes. And he just,
that's what I mean by tact. Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta be willing and ready to read the room. However, at the same time, conversation will always lead us to be enlightened, just by hearing different visions, positions, the ideas, and we have to learn and elevate ourselves by communicating. Let's end the show with Eric LaRose. Same question. You want to throw in some 2 cents? Also, you could add whatever you want to whatever everybody else said, etc., etc.
I want to say first, Thomas, that you picked a really hard question. And in a really good way. I think it's really, really thought provoking. So well done, because I'm just like, I'm in my head this whole time. Like, what do I feel about that? Like, honestly, I just, because I consider myself a pretty open person, generally speaking, but doesn't mean I have all the answers to what you're asking. I kind of want to go backwards with your questions, because I think the one that's sticking out to me is when is the right time? And with what Laura said, there's a time and a place for everything. I genuinely feel that way. And even if something is said, but it doesn't go well, there's something to learn from that. Right. So say I cracked a joke at the wrong time, I'm going to either learn something about myself or the other person if someone gets upset. And I think what it comes down to is like, as long as we have respect for one another, it's all going to be okay. But if you continuously do something that someone doesn't like at the wrong time, then we have a problem here, you know? So I think that there's a learning process with your significant other and or any relationship, right? And like, if you decide to like, learn and evolve, like it's going to be okay. But if you don't, then someone might get upset. So
those are amazing points. No, definitely. You do have to read your partner, and there is a difference from being able to just say what you want to say when you want to say it versus reading the cues. If you say to somebody, hey, I was thinking maybe we could go back to the house later and you and I would do our thing. And then, your mother-in-law turns to you and says, hey, not at the table. And you're like, hey, yeah, okay. Anyway, so what I'm going to do to you later. And they're like, hey, look, just, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. And now I'm the a-hole. I'm definitely the, because I'm not reading the cues, but
it's like you tried, which maybe the mother-in-law would have been like, well, what else?
Yeah. Congratulations.
Like, all right. Details?
Yeah, more meatloaf, You're like, your daughter will. All right. Anyway, so I definitely want to end the show with, obviously, I want to say I love you guys and thank you so much for stepping in to do this episode. I can't wait to have you on another episode. I know we have that planned. So I'm always just grateful that I get to talk to my friends about these open conversations. Jeff is not a friend; he's just somebody. No, just kidding. No. I'm just kidding. I love you, man. He's a new person. He's magical. See, you can tell by the cards. Anyway, so as they say, with any show, Let Me Be Around With You is a place that I've designed that I just wanted to bring people together and have open conversations without arguing or fighting amongst each other. And even like Erica did, I really loved that she said that she was thinking about how she felt about the subject. And that's sometimes we want to be thought-provoking. Other times it's going to be a fun episode, but the idea is that if we can't communicate, what's the point of living? We have to have purpose, and that purpose is voiced when we are able to express ourselves either physically, mentally, or emotionally. And again, I want to thank everyone that came out: Jeffrey Thompson, Erica LaRose, Laura Bugge, and Nick Bonanno. I hope to see you another time, and that's Let Me Be Around With You. Thank you so much.
Oh dear,